So 2 years ago, when I got this crazy idea to pursue Dakar as this goal, I had all these assumptions and ideas about what it would take to actually get there. And this video today is about how dumb I was at that time. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of these things and go through them and have a little bit of fun looking at where I was 2 years ago versus where I am today. So the title of this presentation is My Road to Dakar is Paved with Dumb Assumptions. Actually, it was paved with dumb assumptions. But let's take a look at the time, I had this concept of what I called my 5 pillars to the podium. And what this meant was I had broken down Dakar into these categories of things that I need to work on to get there. First one being my body. At the time when I set this goal, my knees didn't really work. I couldn't work out. I really, truly had been sitting on the sofa for probably 4 or 5 years, just literally playing video games, watching YouTube, and just not really taking good care of myself at all. And I would even say that prior to that, I really wasn't that active. I was doing a lot of stuff with cars. I was considerably overweight, close to 265 pounds at that time. I mean, I'd say I'm probably 30 pounds less at this point. I've actually gotten it down even further than that last year before CODA. The second piece of this was mind. And at the time, I believed that mental toughness was this key because I was watching the Charlie Borman Race to Dakar and they were talking about mental toughness. I would have thought that I had very low mental toughness, but I've discovered that under the pressure of that race and everything I'm trying to do, I actually surprised myself at Sonora a few weeks ago when I pushed through some really hard days and just finished every single waypoint. So I'm not too worried about that anymore. There is some other stuff mentally, though, that I do need to address that I'm going to probably outline it in a future date. So stay tuned for that. Third one is people. And this really just means having a good network of people who, I mean, from everybody who works on my bike to my ortho to my rehab guys and to guys that I ride with, guys who support this goal, just general public who's watching this right now. Everybody who is excited for me trying to at least attempt this keeps me going sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit unmotivated. Resources, of course, that's money, but it's also bikes, it's training, it's travel, and even to some extent time. My job, I'm an IT system administrator, which means that I do not have lots and lots of money or lots and lots of time. I have a few weeks in the year that I can actually take a vacation. You know, this is something where if I had the time, I could maybe start trying to moonlight or something to make a little bit extra money, or try to get my career to go in a different direction somehow where I could be, self-sufficient kind of on my own with a little bit more flexible schedule. Don't know what that looks like. I think for now, though, I need to stay where I'm at. But then finally, there's skill. This is the one in which I made the most wrong assumptions. That's why we're doing this video today. When I started this whole thing, I put it out to a rally community on Facebook. I asked, is it possible to complete Dakar by the time before I'm too old? And, this was when I was 52 at the time. Now I'm 54. They all said, yeah, there's guys who are doing it in their 60s. Well, kind of in the back of my mind, I knew that these guys were also former like ISD racers and things like that. And then when I also reached out to Jimmy Lewis, he responded he said, even the guys who are at the back of the pack are very skilled riders. You can't really buy skill. You're going to have to put in the work. And, I knew that was true. And I think he thought I was just some fly by night, I'm just going to, get discouraged and give up this goal. But I mean, I love the rally format. I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. It's very expensive, but as I've now kind of gone down the path a little bit, it takes a lot of work to develop these skills, especially when you didn't grow up doing this and you didn't start doing this, let's say in your 30s and been riding for 15 years with your buddies out in the desert. With that, we're going to look at skill because this is the one area that I made the most, what I'd call dumb assumptions. Let's see how I did 2 years ago, thinking what I needed to do to get to Dakar. Number one here, confidently ride every type of terrain at race pace. Well, what is race pace? That's not really measurable. Every type of terrain. That's not really measurable. And is that really useful? The type of terrain, I mean, I'm not going to go learning to do hard enduro at Erzberg Rodeo. No, that's not really going to help me much for Dakar. I mean, if I'm riding Carl's Dinner, I mean, I'm probably very qualified to ride a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily inform Dakar. And when it says race pace, what's that mean? I can ride any terrain right now at a race pace, but it's going to be a sea level race pace. And that's not really going to get me through Dakar. It'll get me through the prologue, maybe. It'll get me maybe, you know, all the way, maybe I might complete one stage, but it'll be very late by the time I get in. And I'm not going to be feeling too good the next day. And that would just stack up 3 or 4 days in, and I'd probably be poof, done. Complete 4 trials events. Okay. I don't really understand why I was so hot for trials that 2 years ago, or thinking that that would inform anything about Dakar. Trials is awesome for developing balance and body position and throttle and clutch control and very specific techniques of timing and hopping the bike. And granted, these are skills that I'm going to need to know. If you're going 2 miles an hour on a trials bike and you need to hop the bike up onto something, well, I mean, there's sometimes when you're on a rally bike and you're going 60 and you need to actually hop something. Same skill, same basic maneuver. Doing it slowly in trials is probably a good idea for training, but trials, no. Practicing on a dirt bike, maybe slower speeds, absolutely. But this is not performance criteria. This is just an activity. So this whole idea of trials and why 4, it's not going to really inform anything. All right. Complete 4 enduro races. Okay, now we're talking. Okay, this is something where you're going to have a little bit more speed. You're going to have a little bit more aggressiveness. You're going to attack. So again, I don't know why I said 4, but this is not performance criteria. Finishing 4 enduro races, again, is not going to inform getting to Dakar. This, I'm going to be in a C class enduro race, and this needs to be down under activities, which would be just compete in enduro races, because these short little races do push you above and beyond what you train for. And for $50, hey man, if you hurt yourself or you DNF, no big loss. Whereas Sonora, when you've got $6,000 into it, you're not going to be running above your training. You're going to be running below your training to survive. So complete 2 desert races. Okay, now I'm starting to get a little bit, things are getting a little bit more specific, as I'd say towards Dakar. This would be a good thing to do. It's not a performance criteria though. This is a activity as well. Now, when I did do this, I remember thinking desert race meaning Baja, Mint, Vegas to Reno, those types of races. The long races test endurance. The short hare scrambles like District 37 would absolutely push me up into some faster speeds. And I think, from an activity standpoint, that's a really good idea. But again, this is not performance criteria. This is not going to 2 desert races, even if it's Vegas to Reno and Baja. No, it's not going to make me any more prepared for Dakar. Because I think at those levels, I might run, like I was saying, there's that cost to survival thing, and I think in these longer races, I'm going to try to finish. Complete 2 roadbook rally style races. Okay, getting a little better here. Now we're talking rallies. But as I've learned from doing Sonora, I do ride at a slower pace. However, these are requirements for Dakar, and these are things that I need to be able to test myself and measure myself. But 2 roadbook rally style races, Sonora makes sense. Hellas doesn't make sense. That's nothing like Dakar. Those surfaces are mostly enduro and roads with just kind of frenetic roadbook instructions on existing paths. But that said, this is getting closer, but not close enough. So those are off my performance criteria because it really isn't measurable. And it doesn't, again, really inform my readiness for Dakar. I do think at the time when I did this, I was thinking that I was building a resume for the ASO. But knowing what I know now, especially after Sonora, there's getting to Dakar, and then there's surviving Dakar, and then there's thriving, let's just say. I just want to come somewhere between thriving and surviving and not leave that race absolutely broken. Completely rebuild a race motorcycle. This is actually not a bad idea. I think at the time I didn't really believe I was that mechanically inclined. Does rebuilding an entire motorcycle help or inform anything for Dakar? It gives me some degree of mechanical confidence, I think, but I don't think it's necessary to, again, finish Dakar. I think there's some skills that I need to pull from that. And you'll see in my next slide that I've actually kind of addressed this one. That one's gone. So pretty much every criteria that I had, I've pretty much erased. And now with what I know in 2 years and having done a couple rallies, let's see what we've got here. So the revised performance criteria with the mechanical stuff, field repair, fuel system, electrical, and other mechanical systems. This is something where I probably could work with some other guys who've been racing for a long time who can teach me some of the tricks and tips of what do you do on the side of the road, with zip ties, duct tape, spare pieces of your bladder tubing if you need to use that, just to hack something together so that you're not trying to do kind of higher order creative thinking while you're exhausted in a kind of an adrenaline charged mode. So that's something to consider learning how to do. I'm hoping that when I eventually get to this training with Lyndon Poskett, that he'll be able to share some of this info with me, which would be awesome. But here's the big one, right? And this came from doing Sonora. And this is why I did Sonora, was so that I could have a sense of where I am and what I need to do and where I need to go. And that is complete an FIM rally. And that would be Sonora or a Rally de Morocco within 30% of the speed of the number 1 pro rider. So when I look at the results at Sonora, my time was 29 hours. Skylar's was 14. That puts me at about, I believe that's like 50%, or, essentially, I need to do the math. I need to work this out. But essentially, when I look at some of the other guys who are kind of in the mid pack and guys who are going to Dakar or who have been to Dakar, we're talking about guys running within their 30 to 20% of Skylar's times. So that is where probably the ASO now is starting to look at people's times, and they've been rejecting people after last year's Rally du Maroc. There was a number of people who applied for Dakar and didn't get in because they didn't have the speed. So this is something I'm going to have to work on, and that's getting faster. How does one get faster in the desert on these dunes and all this other stuff? It's just practice. But I need to get out there and play and build confidence going over some of this stuff. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of fun to look at where I was thinking last year to what I know now and revise this and kind of do this publicly and have some fun with it. If you like this, please, I guess, like, subscribe, and do all this other stuff. I mean, this may just be on Facebook. I don't know. I'm thinking about trying to get things onto YouTube, and I want to start doing more of these things. And I've had a number of people reach out and say that they really like it when I do these. So anyway, have a good one.